Well, another way you can get a wide receiver, and it's far more cost-effective, is through the draft, guys. Patriots have to decide, though, whether or not they're going to use their 14th overall pick on a wideout. The Athletic's Chad Graff says don't bet on it. Quote, one former team official who requested anonymity said the Patriots' preference at this point would be to address the position with a veteran rather than using their first-round pick on a receiver. Since taking over the Patriots, Belichick has had 14 selections in the top 30 of the draft. He did not use a single one of them to pick a wide receiver. Are you guys hearing the same thing, that they don't want to draft a wide receiver, that they'd rather go out and trade for someone or just re-sign Jacoby Myers? I have feelings on it, but I want to hear if you think this is really going to happen.
Well, I haven't heard that, and I think they are open to using that pick on a receiver. That's my opinion. I've spoken to some people as well. I don't think they've completely ruled it out, but I also don't disagree with the preference part of that report. Bill Belichick, I believe, believes that receiver might be one of the last positions that you try to fix on a roster that is eventually trying to contend for a championship. Beetle, when you look at their history in the first round, it's a lot of big defensive linemen. It's a lot of big offensive linemen, those planet-type players that are really hard to find. It wouldn't shock me if they wanted to go and get one of those at 14.
Yeah, that would not surprise me. And I also know that historically, Bill and his front offices have done a much better job of acquiring veterans than they have acquiring guys by way of the draft. I mean, there's a laundry list of guys. Start all the way back with Randy Moss and Wes Welker to even, Brandon Lloyd or Brandon Cooks. They're guys like that. Danny Amendola. Players that are veterans that they've signed or they've been able to trade for that have been more impactful players here than the guys they've acquired in the draft.
Okay, so I fully understand that and obviously agree. But where all I've heard from the football people like you guys is that what you're hearing around the league is you play the Patriots, you're not afraid. You don't look at that roster. Mm-hmm. You're not worried about any of their wide receivers. So my question is, why can't you either re-sign Jacoby Myers or go out and get a free agent or trade for someone and bring him in and draft a wide receiver? Because the guys that you're going to be trading for, unless it's a Jerry Jeudy type, they're going to be older. The guys you're signing are going to be older at the end of their career. At what point do you start investing in, Phil, you've called it the second most important position on the football team. Like, Beetle, why can't you do both?
You can. I just don't know if it's going to happen with the 14th pick. I could see them drafting a receiver in the second, third, fourth round. They could do that again. I just don't think they're going to do it with a pick as high as 14. And I think there's still a little bit of fear after the N'Keal Harry experience that they had in drafting a receiver in the first round and getting it as wrong as they did.
So you call it an experience. I call it a debacle. You mentioned a name, DeAndre Hopkins. Is that someone, I think people thought for a while the price would be very high. Is that a price that maybe the Patriots would be willing to pay for a receiver? What are you hearing?
Would the Patriots be willing to pay it? I know there are people in the league that would say no. Based on how things ended in Houston with Bill O'Brien. People, again, this is across the league, they would just look at that from afar and say, I'm not sure that's a marriage that would work out.
What is the price, by the way?
So the price, what I've been told, would be probably a second-round pick. Okay. And maybe you start there, or maybe it ends up being multiple picks, and you end up throwing a day 3 selection in there, too. But that's what I've heard. That's the buzz in Indianapolis. Second-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. If it's the right offer, the Cardinals are going to be willing to trade him. They said some nice things about him at the podium this week, but they also didn't necessarily commit to the guy long-term. So that's something that I would consider. Again, if you can make it work with the offensive coordinator. Beetle, he's viewed as a mercurial guy in the league. He's still viewed that way. Maybe you don't want to do it because of the personality thing, but the talent is still there.
I mean, they need the talent, so I wouldn't let his, sort of personality or issues with Bill O'Brien get in the way. I'm sorry, I wouldn't. I'd tell Bill O'Brien, you got to fix this. You got to get on the phone with this guy. You got to make sure everything is okay, because if he's available and they're interested in doing a deal with you, I think that they've got to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, all due respect to Jacoby Myers, but if that's your move of the offseason, the only one, and then you don't draft a receiver until the third round or something like that, to me, that's going to be a disappointment. All right, well, if the Patriots don't draft a receiver, guys, is there any chance that they take Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson? Just look what he's capable of. Pats reportedly met with the electric Richardson at the Combine, and while he's a projected top 10 pick, there is always a chance he could slide. And if he does slide, Tommy Curran says, you might want to pounce.
Obviously, you look at him, and if you're the Patriots, you never have a shortage of self-confidence that you could fix somebody. You say, I mean, here his feet his release sucks and his feet are bad. We'll fix that stuff. And the next thing you know, in 2 years, when Mac's done, say, see you later, Mac, and we've re-upped. And if he's sitting there and he was projected to go 8 and he's still sitting on the board and your quarterback you're not sold on, you've got to think twice.
Do you have to think about it, Pete? I was listening to you and Joe Murray this afternoon,
yeah.
and I don't know if you actually did this, but you said on your show this afternoon that you were going to go home and just watch YouTube videos of Anthony Richardson.
I've watched a half hour's worth of YouTube highlights of this
There
guy.
are that many?
Yeah. Multiple videos.
How many of them throws?
But
a lot, actually. You'd be surprised.
But I do want to say that on your show, Joe Murray said, I don't know if I'd take him. But do the Patriots, if he falls there, and Joe Murray said on your show, I don't watch a ton of college. Well, I don't really watch any college football because I don't really like it. But and I certainly don't watch Florida football. But Joe Murray does, and he says you're either going to get like a superstar or this is going to be a colossal bust. Like, is that worth it with everything that you need, taking that risk at 14?
Yeah, because the future of the franchise is dependent upon having a franchise quarterback, and so this is less about the individual quarterback himself and more about the idea that they should never limit themselves from sitting there and having an opportunity to talk to quarterback prospects, and I'm glad they did. This is what they should be doing. I think that, they should continue to draft quarterbacks. I've been saying this for months. They drafted Zappe last year. I thought that was great. They should do it again. They should identify another guy in this draft.
Okay, but this is a first-round pick, Beetle. This is a first-rounder. This is
quarterback. It may not be at 14, though. Right? It may not be at 14.
Okay.
It may be a situation where he slides and you're at the end of the first round, top of the second round, and you've got to do some maneuvering to get there. At 14, that seems a little extreme. But what if he does slide? The scenario that Tommy Curran described, where he slides down the board a little bit and you've got a chance to go get him.
But I think
Be ready for
I think Curran's saying, Phil, if he slides down to 14, you may have to pounce and go get him. But here's the thing YouTube highlights are great, but the key word in there is highlight.
Oh, yeah, no, it's the best of. There were no mistakes.
Yeah, there's no mistakes. Like, you don't see, there's questions about his accuracy. There's questions about his ability to read the field. Like, he might be a good athlete, but he's a very unfinished product.
This, I could tell you, would stun people in the league. If the Patriots ended up doing this, if this ended up happening, and I think there's some questions as to whether or not it'll happen, because I do think the league is pretty high on the talent there, but people would be shocked, people that I've spoken to, if the Patriots ended up actually pulling the trigger there. Number one, because of Mac Jones, because of the contract that he's on, because you still do have him for the next few years, and because of what he showed as a rookie, but also because of Richardson as a player. This is a guy who was around 50% completions, and it wasn't like he was playing with the receiving core in Wyoming that Josh Allen had.
Yeah.
He was playing in the SEC with some real talented pieces around him at the University of Florida. It should have been better than that. And so if you make that investment at 14, you better be comfortable sitting him for a while and allowing him to develop. And I'm not saying there's no value in that, Trenni, but not when you already have Mac Jones on the roster.
You want another quarterback on the roster?
Do I want another quarterback on the roster? I think it's smart to draft quarterbacks, but not at 14 overall this year.
We agree. More quarterbacks.
More quarterbacks.
Okay,
More
yeah,
quarterbacks.
First, second, third, whatever it is. I want another quarterback.